Terrell Edmunds, man, the Pittsburgh Steelers officially said that they are going to decline his 5th-year option, which comes as a little bit of a surprise slash not. We talked about it a little bit, but just the details of what this means. So a lot of people heard he's declined the option. They thought he's not going to be playing here in this upcoming season. That's not the case. He actually will still be on the team and still will be playing this coming season. The 5th-year option is pertaining to the following year after that, where his contract would be ending. So that's the first element of it. But in terms of why I said part of me was a little bit surprised, was because we said, man, he is a good safety, not a great safety, because of the lack of ball skills. We felt that he's, above average or really good in terms of his tackling, but the ball skills is the part where he leaves us wanting more. So that part of it was like, well, man, I can still see them wanting to pick up the 5th-year option just because he's a valuable player, a good asset for this team. But then we said the flip side is I can see them declining it because is he going to be worth the value of that 5th-year option? Or if you were to just try to extend him, would it be cheaper from a cost standpoint on a per year basis? So that's why I said, man, part of me was a little surprised, but the other side not, because it makes sense from an organizational standpoint because he hasn't really given us this bona fide he's going to be a Pro Bowler or an all-pro style play just yet. Whereas with Minka, we've seen that already. We've seen 2 years now of it. So the sample size, you can believe it. Whereas with Edmunds, like I said, he really hasn't turned the corner from playing the ball standpoint. That's the biggest knock on him right now. And at the safety position,
I think he did make improvements though. We agreed upon
yes,
that. Yeah.
Definitely did make improvements last year, but as a whole, we would like to see him continue to take steps forward in that department.
For sure. Whenever you texted me that, I was shocked. I was actually kind of pissed off in a way because Steelers with Edmunds, it just makes sense going forward. Mm-hmm. Like, who are you going to get better than Edmunds right now? I think he's a really solid player, and I talked about this all season. I think he's underrated, especially at the 5th-year option. So the number is $6.75 million.
Yeah.
If you tell me that for 1 year deal, that makes so much sense to me. Like, why wouldn't you do that if you're the Steelers? Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I like it more if it means it's going to be an extension.
Right.
Because I do see Terrell Edmunds and Minka Fitzpatrick being the safety combination for the following years to come, the next 3, 4, 5 years, or whatever it is. And as much as we want to talk about Edmunds, he leaves a little bit more to be desired from a coverage standpoint. He's a staple for the defense in terms of tackling. You've talked about how we funnel a lot of our plays, or the offensive plays that we're going up against, to Edmunds, and he makes all the tackles that need to be had. Extremely athletic, first-round talent. So I'm good with the decline of the 5th-year option if it means we're just going to extend him, maybe get a 3 or 4 year deal, which would maybe mean we get him for $4 million a year, maybe $5 million a year, as opposed to the $6.75 million. But if it was just 1 year deal, $6.75 million, and that meant we wouldn't be able to do contract extension talks. Because, you know what I mean? If we would have accepted the 5th-year option, does that mean we couldn't do contract extensions?
They could have still done the extension. It's different than like the franchise tag. When you hear about the franchise tag, you have up until I think June. It's like that second week in June or something like that to negotiate a long-term extension. If that can't happen by then, you have to wait. You can't talk about anything until the season ends. With the 5th-year option, they have the full ability to negotiate whenever they want, as long as he's still technically under contract, which would be up until that new league year in March the following year. So they could have picked it up and still did an extension. But as a whole, the thing that I do like when you talked about the numbers, I agree. I mean, I think you can extend him for a lot cheaper in that $4 to $5 million range. Even if you wanted to take it to $6 million, it's still cheaper than the 6.57, however much you said right there. So to me, I think that this is a good thing because you can still extend him. I still think the Steelers will extend him, but this also hedges the bet for the Steelers because we saw a similar scenario like this with Bud Dupree when he was coming into that 5th-year option year. At the time, the most sacks he had in the season was 7. Remember, he didn't get that double-digit year until the 5th year. So when you're watching him, it's like, well, we see flashes, but it's not happening consistent enough. But we're seeing him continue to go in the right direction. But because he's a first-round draft pick, the perception is, well, man, maybe this guy's a bust because he hasn't delivered what the expectations are for a first-round draft pick. So the Steelers bet on themselves, right? They say, well, we'll pick up the 5th-year option, and then from there, we're going to franchise tag you. Essentially having them play on 2 1-year deals. instead of just extending him, which they could have done then, probably would have been way cheaper, right? Probably in the $6 to $7 million range, just because at that time he didn't have any numbers. But instead, they decided, hey, we're going to play this game of, all right, fifth-year option, franchise tag, and then from there, we know Bud wouldn't got paid because he performed that way. This right here, similar scenario, right? Edmunds has shown flashes. He's shown what he could be, but he hasn't done it consistently enough. So if they wanted to extend him now, they could do that. It would be very team-friendly. Wouldn't break the bank at all. Multi-year deal, you could definitely do that and still have a quality starting safety, which Edmunds is, for the next 2 to 3 years. Now, they could say, all right, we're not going to extend him and truly let this be a one-year deal, but the risk that you run with that is if Edmunds goes out here, we know he could tackle. And we already saw him take steps in the right direction from a coverage standpoint last year. If he puts it all together this year, and it's a contract year like this, now you're stuck having to pay him a lot more or potentially losing him all the way through free agency. So that's the double-edged sword of this scenario with the team saying that we're going to decline that fifth-year option.
They could still negotiate, though.
They could, yes.
Fifth-year option, but it doesn't make sense from a player standpoint to do that, because it's like, hey, you're already giving me $6.75 million for a year. I don't want to go backwards necessarily from a money standpoint. Right. So I'm not going to negotiate this right now, even though you can do it.
Yeah.
From a team standpoint, yes, this is the kind of play that they're trying to do now.
So in response to that, though, if I'm the player, I'm still willing to negotiate if I'm on the fifth year. But
the money's got to be high.
It has to be high. That's the big. So for us,
it can't be as much of a drop.
But this is the thing, right? So say, all right, if we're gonna do the math, 6, 4 is 10, another 5. All right, so we say it's a $15 million extension, right? Say that we do a 3 for $15 mil. It's still gonna factor out to 6 mil, 4 mil, 5 mil, right? But instead of it being 4, 5, 6, just have it 6, 4, 5 or 6, 5, 4. You know what I mean? Like,
6.75.
as long as the number is 20 mil, or the number is 15 mil over 3 years, over however many years you wanted to make it, all you have to do is make sure that first year is going to match what the fifth-year option would have been, and then from there, you just make the numbers work accordingly afterwards. So they still could do that, and that's the other thing that I'm saying, like in this scenario, why I think an extension makes more sense is because you can still say, hey, well, Edmunds, even though we decline that option, we're still going to give you the 6.5 on this extension, but your second year, it's going to be like 5 or 5.5, you know what I mean? And then they can either have that middle year as that bridge year where it's kind of low or kind of high, just depending on what you think of them. And then that third year can be the make or break. All right, now this is starter money, pro roller money. If you haven't lived up to that just yet, then now we can cut you or go somewhere else. But I think they have a lot of flexibility with that, though.
Yeah, in essence, with the Minka deal, that $10 million, that's a value to them. If they would have done this with Edmunds, this wouldn't have necessarily been a value for that specific year. Like Terrell Edmunds' value is maybe around that $5 million range, whereas Minka's value is, maybe 16, 17, 18.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, I guess it makes sense for the Steelers standpoint. And then, coming into that offseason, we're going to have a lot of cap flexibility too. So I guess we want to maintain that in this instance, because the Minka thing, there's just too much value.
Very true.
For you not to do that. But with the Edmunds, it's like, let's see what kind of flexibility we can have as opposed to just putting $6.75 million like right off the books like that. Right. Maybe we could lower that a little bit.
Absolutely. Now, let's see. This was some of the people said in the comment section. All right. So Paul agrees with you in terms of what we said, man, the extension and things like that. Winters and Manuel Molina, in terms of should the Steelers have picked up Edmunds' fifth-year option, they both said no. Right here, excuse me. Sunny Bros Delight says no. Make him think we're not, and then try to see if he'll ball out. Now, Cam, this is an interesting take right here, which I actually do like. He says Trey Norwood is going to be his competition. If he doesn't beat out a 7th rounder, he's gone. Now, Trey is interesting.
You're high on Norwood?
No. That's what he said.
Okay.
That's he said that. I didn't say that. He said that.
Okay.
But I said I do like it because I could see Trey Norwood in terms of he was a productive player. The thing was he just tested slow. He was slow. I mean, it's like 4.5 or 4.6, something like that. At safety,
that's not slow these days.
It's crazy, right?
It's nuts.
It's depending on the position, though, right? If we were saying that it's a outside linebacker, you're like, oh no, he's straight. That's bad. That's fast enough. It's a D lineman. Whoa, like cruising.
But it depends on who you're up against, because
Yeah.
Saban Collins did 4.6. He's an inside linebacker.
Yeah.
It's just that JOK's in the mix right now.
Right.
Although he didn't run his 40, but Jamin Davis ran like that 4.3 or the 4.4, whatever it was. So that just makes that 40 look bad.
It does. It does. Real bad. So that's the knock on him. But Jacob Osborne says no in terms of should we have picked up Edmunds' extension. He says no.
Hey.
We could get a veteran next year that's just as good for less and maybe draft a safety early. All right. And then
people don't like Edmunds, dude.
No, they don't. All right. Kajana Haney says no, but Edmunds needs to be re-signed. He is instrumental for our success on defense. Each year he has gotten better as a player. I do agree with that, and I think we both agreed with that.
Yeah, I thought he played pretty good last year. There was 2 or 3 major lapses. The one was specifically the Baltimore game on that Wednesday night where McSorley threw that ball and they housed it for 70 yards. But there was maybe 2 or 3 others. I saw him making some good plays throughout the season,
I agree.
Critical plays too.
Mm-hmm. I mean, we talked about it. I mean, it was all right. This play right here, that's an Edmunds play. Oh, look at this. This is a good read right here. He's playing through the hands right here. Something he hasn't been doing right here. This is growth. I'm with you, man.
Yeah. I really think he should be on the team going forward.
Ooh, and all right. So Winter says this. So he says that Edmunds has been below average every year since last year, and unless he comes different next season, it's time to move on. All right. Okay.
I think that's the thing, though. You take those maybe 2 or 3 plays that I talked about,
right,
and then you magnetize it. If you didn't like Edmunds coming into the season, you're just gonna not like Edmunds.
It's one of the things.
Like he's really got to just completely go off, I guess, for you to really like him.
But I think it's largely because of the first round grade, as we talked about. We said if he's a second rounder, we're over here like, man, we're singing this guy's praises. We're talking about how he has exceeded the expectations. But since he's a first rounder, and we see another first rounder in that same class in terms of Minkah, and we saw how he's been able to just set the league on fire, it does give that feeling of, man, I want more. I don't feel like this guy's good enough. But if it was Edmunds next to Sean Davis, we'd be looking at Edmunds and speaking of him a lot higher as well.
Who was in that draft around Edmunds? Because
wasn't it Derwin James was the other safety, right? If
I told you, so he was taken like the second.
Yeah, I think it was Derwin was the other one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then that makes sense if you're going to compare him to maybe some of the other safeties around that point, because
those are the 3 that the top 3 was Derwin James, Minkah, and then I think Edmunds was the third one off the board, if I remember correctly.
Because if you just look at his stats, man. For a late first rounder, 78 tackles first year, 105 tackles second year, and then 68 tackles this past year. But like we said, we think he improved in coverage as not only this season went on, but just in general as his career went on. Man, there's too many first round complete busts out there.
Yes.
To say that Edmunds is a bad pick, and even if he was a first rounder, can you hold it against him like that much?
I personally don't think so.
I think he's had a solid career thus far for us.
I think he has as well. The biggest thing is
compared to even some of our other first round picks, like Artie Burns, Jarvis Jones.
I don't like doing that because but I'm with you 100%. Yeah, I'm like compared to the guys that we view as first round busts. When you talk about Artie, when you talk about Jarvis, Edmunds is further ahead of those guys, way more productive than those guys. I think the best comp for him right now is Bud Dupree when Bud was coming into that 4th season. I think that they both were identical in terms of productivity, in terms of the perception. I personally think Edmunds is a little bit ahead of where Bud was because Bud, remember, had rotated for 2 years, had the injury year, and never really put together that full season, whereas Edmunds has at least been out there consistently those first 3 years. So I would give him a slight nod. The difference is Bud has a chance to have way more impact with sacks, whereas interceptions are a lot harder to come by than...
And that's not his style.
Exactly. So that to me is like the big difference between those two guys as they were coming into this year. But as a whole, I think their scenarios are very similar though.
All right, so here's the draft. I was completely wrong. Derwin James was picked first round. He was 17.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Minkah Fitzpatrick 11. Derwin James, trying to look for any other safeties in the first round. I think it was just them 2.
Yeah, because Edmunds was the 3rd off the board, right?
Yeah. After that, you have Jesse Bates, the 3rd in the second
round.
Round.
Good. Yeah, he's definitely good.
But then Justin Reed, Houston in the 3rd round.
What are your feelings on Justin Reed?
Tracy Walker, Detroit Lions, 3rd round.
Like, I'm not tripping on those guys.
That's what I mean. Like, to say that, who we passed up on these great safeties, we passed up. Now, granted,
it was other players on the board.
Players, yeah.
Because this is my thing.
Darius Leonard.
No. But this is the thing. Nobody knew Darius Leonard was Darius Leonard like how he is now back in that draft. The two that I thought of was Leighton Vander Esch. He was the one that everybody was clamoring over, and then
he went 19 though.
Right.
He went above.
No,
yeah, he was first round.
No. I'm talking about for Edmunds, for the Edmunds pick. Edmunds wouldn't win.
He went 20. We were 28.
We were 20. Okay. Because that was the one I kept thinking about.
Before.
Yeah, it was him, and it was somebody else. Oh my goodness.
Can you see it?
Yeah, go up real quick. Let me look. All right. Oh, I'm drawing a blank on the dude's name. No, it's not that low.
There's really not one.
It isn't though, because I was like Darius Leonard. Like, nobody knew Darius Leonard at that time. Yeah, bro. Well, we could have took Lamar. No, I'm messing. That's what Douglas just said.
Some people have said that, but you weren't picking. You weren't picking quarterback.
And people are saying that now after the fact, seeing how these guys are developed. That's why the whole Darius Leonard thing.
Dude, I swear to God,
no one talked about him.
People up in New England talk about like, oh, we should have taken Lamar Jackson at that point. I think that didn't they win a Super Bowl or two from that point?
Yes. You weren't taking Lamar then anyways, though.
There's that hindsight 2020.
And Lamar was electric that year, too. But it was still like, we weren't taking a quarterback when we had 7 here. We weren't. And if you were New England, you weren't taking that quarterback when you had Brady there. Like, it's just not happening.
No. So I think we're on the same page with Edmunds.
Yeah.
Bring him back. Maybe a 3 or 4 year deal. Try to make it around that $4 or $5 million range. He's a solid player, and hopefully he can just improve and outplay that contract. Then.
Which he's been doing so far. We've said it. Each year he's definitely gotten better, so that's going to be the big thing. Can he continue to do it? But I also think that this is going to motivate him. Now, he's already been motivated when you're playing next to Minka. That tends to happen. But I just think that now with the whole, all right, we're not going to pick up that option because we feel like we can do, something a little bit more team-friendly from an extension standpoint. Even if they don't extend him, all the way, the energy has to be like, yo, okay, now
we don't believe in you.
Exactly.
To the extent you may believe in yourself.
Exactly.
But that happens. That happens in any type of feeling like this.
And we could see a scenario where he might say, man, I don't want an extension. Because I feel like I can get something better if I ball out on this 1 year like this. That could be the energy as well, man.
Which I wouldn't like because I really think the Steelers should bring him back.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to be 24 next season, too. He's young as hell.
Absolutely,
Last season, he played at 23 years old. Like, come on, dude. Like, even if he signed a 3 or 4 year deal, his next contract would be when he's like 27, 28.
Bro. And I just think you keeping him and Minka together. Like we said, they play off each other so well because one is great at what the other one is bad at. Let's be frank about it, right? Minka has great ball skills because Edmunds has not so great ball skills. Edmunds is great at tackling because Minka is not so great at tackling. But they play off of each other extremely well. And you have to think too, man, it's 2 years together thus far, but they still haven't even had a full offseason together yet. Last year you had to deal with COVID. This year you got the soft strike. We still haven't even seen what they can fully do if they really get a chance to bond and get cohesiveness and all this other stuff, man. So, like, to me, I just think, man, you got to keep that pair, that tandem intact somehow, some way.
That's a good point. Yeah, think of how many off seasons like Ryan Clark and Polamalu had together. There's no question Polamalu was the better safety, but they elevated each other's play.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, they complemented each other awesome, and this could be that same type of scenario. You got the Minka Fitzpatrick, Troy Polamalu comparison there, but Terrell Edmunds, I'm not saying he's the all-pro or perennial Pro Bowler, but if he keeps on this pace, who's to say he doesn't make a Pro Bowl or two in his career at some point, just kind of like Ryan Clark did?
Absolutely, bro.
Who knows? Yeah.
Either way, I like them together, man.
Yeah, for sure.
You got to keep them together.
Yeah, we said our piece on it.